And welcome to Our Life the Show for the first time in, month? 2 months almost?
Yeah.
Today we're going to be going over some of our worst vacation experiences. But real quick, I do want to say that as you probably have noticed, there's been a couple changes on the channel. Namely that, Sonja's content's been the main focus and Our Life the Show's been absent. I will go over this more at the end of the video, but I just wanted to let you know that we will discuss that. But, off that, as I was saying, this episode is going to be based on horrible travel experiences, a lot of them embarrassing, and mostly for me.
Mostly embarrassing for you, yeah.
And I wanted to talk about this because we just recently, as seen in one of Sonja's most recent episodes, visited Salem, Massachusetts. And while the trip itself probably went over alright, there were moments of it that were just stressful and certain things that I wasn't a fan of, which I will go into here real quick after. But that is actually going to be an honorable mention of mine. Anything you want to say before I get into the... it's also going to be... I'm going to do like a top 5 format here. Like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And some of these, especially like maybe number 1, might not seem so terrible to... Well, I mean, it is terrible. It might not seem as bad as you would think. But it's circumstance, a lot of it too, so...
Well, mine mine are not ranked. They're just stuff that's happened between us throughout the years, but they're not, like, any more worse than the other.
So, anyway, as I said, honorable mention before I get into it proper, I do want to talk about a few things. First, that there is going to be a lot of poop and puke in these stories. So if that's something that makes you squeamish or you're sensitive to it, then you probably don't want to watch this or listen to these stories. You can watch us on mute, though. Give us that nice view count there going, that watch time. Just put us on mute, look at our beautiful faces. I'm fine with that as well. And speaking of puke, we had a little bit of an issue during our Salem trip. Namely that our son got sick during it. And that there's more in Salem I want to complain about, but that was like the big issue.
This wasn't even in Salem, this was in Vermont.
Yeah, it was on the way back from Salem. We were eating at a diner, and he just all of a sudden was like, I'm not feeling good. And like he started, what made me feel bad for him, he don't get sick often. Like, maybe the only other time I can think of is actually on this list. But he was starting to like get scared because he was getting sick.
He literally said, I'm scared because his stomach was hurting.
And it made me feel terrible. But then he just proceeded to vomit all over the floor of this place. All over me. Yeah,
because you guys were on your way to the bathroom, but you only made it halfway.
Yeah, we didn't make it to the bathroom quite fully. And the staff, for their part, they were great. They cleaned it up. They didn't complain much. I left them a hell of a tip. I can't remember how much. But when I was actually in the bathroom, I was trying to get Sonja's attention because I was covered in puke. I couldn't walk out of there. And obviously his clothes was soiled too, so I was trying to get her attention to go get us some fresh clothes or something, and it took a while to...
The reason why is because all our stuff was on the table, so I'm like, how am I supposed to leave the table? And I didn't have the keys. You had the keys.
You could have still left the table because it's not like I was going anywhere covered in puke.
You were in the bathroom.
I know, but you could have claimed got them and all that, which you did. That is what happened.
It's not like you had to wait that long.
And also to mention, the hotel itself was kind of not as great as advertised. The hotel was on a waterfront, which was the pretty part, but our window itself was filthy. The hallway smelled like urine, which I don't know why it smelled that bad.
I don't know if it smelled like urine, but it definitely smelled like stagnant cigarettes.
It smelled like a urinal patty. So maybe not urine, but definitely something urine adjacent. Okay. There were some suspected bloodstains on both our wall and our bed.
Well, the bloodstain that I saw was, I think it was nail polish, but there was definitely stains on the mattress.
There are red stains. It could have been nail polish, but who knows. I think if it was blood, it would have been faded more, maybe a little brownish. And then we wanted to go actually enjoy the scenery, go closer to the water. But that whole area leading up to the water, and even the deck that was out in front of the water, was just covered in bird shit.
Yeah, it was like every 2 inches.
It was a minefield.
Even the pool, there was an outdoor pool. That thing was filthy. It looks like it hadn't been cleaned in a month.
Yeah, it was a minefield of filth. The pool wasn't clean. There was a restaurant that was attached to the hotel that was advertised in the hotel's, description, and it was closed the whole time you were there except for a poker tournament. So yeah, my experience with the hotel wasn't that great either. And a second and very quick honorable mention before I get into the top 5 was when I was maybe 11, I would say. I stayed at Daytona Beach, and I was in a hot tub with a bunch of other girls that were around my age, and was trying to impress them. So I went underneath the water of this jacuzzi type thing. Ended up getting a nosebleed, and obviously grossed some of them out. But 2 of the girls, actually older ones, took me up to their hotel room to get my nose clean. They were older, they were wearing bikinis, so you know what? Things turned out fine, for the most part. So without further ado, we're going to get into my top 5 worst vacation experiences. Number 5. Anytime I've taken the bus. So when I was younger, probably 16, we didn't live in New York. I used to live down south. So I came up this way to visit my family and friends a lot that lived here. And sometimes I would stay longer than the rest of my family that I lived with. They would come up, they would stay for a little bit, and they'd leave. So I'd be here longer. And I would take the bus back down south. Not a great idea. Not only because I was 16 years old, which is still young.
I couldn't imagine that.
I mean, I was a big 16-year-old, both, weight-wise and height-wise. So you would think there probably wouldn't be that many people that mess with me. But if you've ever taken a bus, you know that there's a lot of drug addicts, homeless people, other types of people that are trying to, I guess, proposition you, get you to buy something, give them money in some way, shape, or form, con you. One guy, I was in New York City, didn't know my way around, and he wanted me to give him... he showed me where my bus terminal was, and then after the fact, he's like, okay, that'll be $20 or something like that.
$20?
Yeah. And he didn't look like the type of guy I'd want to mess with, so I just gave him the money. But also in New York City, I got robbed. I had my wallet, stupidly, because it was my mom's suggestion to not carry my wallet on me, because someone could try to pickpocket it or something like that.
It's better.
Which could happen, but in this case, I had it under the bus, and it was in the pocket of my suitcase. Well, somebody went ahead and took it upon themselves to not only go in my suitcase and steal all the money out of my wallet that I had, but they left an empty pack of Salem cigarettes in where the money was.
That makes up for money.
And other instances of... the reason I'm grouping this all together is just there's never been a good bus experience, except for maybe one, which is coming from downstate back home or whatever. But any longer trip I've taken has definitely been terrible. Even in Japan, the bus trips, well, one of them was fine. But another thing that happened was I went from New York City to Virginia. Maybe a little bit longer. Maybe it was North Carolina. I can't remember. And I was sitting with a woman who was equal in size to me. Now, if you've ever seen these bus seats, you know they're not huge. So there was 2 rather large people sitting in the same thing, but I was the one that got the window seat because she sat down after me and I was unlucky. Well, she proceeds to turn on her MP3 player and fall asleep, and as she's falling asleep, she's swaying with the bus, crushing me into the wall, and all I can hear is her loud music, and I nudge her every once in a while, and she'd just go, and then still proceed to sleep. So
push her off.
We eventually got to we eventually got to like a rest stop sort of thing, and we were basically I don't know why we all sat in the same seats. I don't know if we couldn't switch seats or what, but I did, and I tried to sit on the outside and have her on the inside. And yes, because of our size, I was kind of half out of that seat, like in the pathway aisle, yes. But she and she was on the inside, but it was better than where I was sitting. We hit one goddamn bump, and she wakes up and she's like, "Oh, I can't deal with this. Can we switch?" I'm like, seriously? After you just crushed me for like fucking 100 miles?
How is it different from the inside than the outside? That's my question.
And what was also bad about it, in my opinion, was the fact that her music was so loud and my MP3 player was dead at that time, and no way to charge it. It was before things like the charge ports were put in the fucking buses and stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, I've just never generally had any good experience on a bus. So.
What?
Don't you have... Yeah, I mean, you have stuff you want to say, so I know, like you said, I thought we'd just go back and forth with mine, but you have some particular things there that you want to...
Well, I can do the Salem one, rolling back with that one. It's not anything big, it's just like kind of bullets. But one of them, again, is no parking and the tourist prices in some areas, which I've kind of talked about. And we got lost, and it was like no civilization. It was just house, 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 house. And we were driving for a while, and then we finally found a Dunkin' Donuts because my son had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Salem is right outside Boston. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the parking situation, cities usually do have to have particular areas to park because they're so crowded. But what got me is we were in a suburb and we were driving a good 10 miles without seeing a single place to go use the restroom or anything like that. And I found that kind of odd being in a more metropolitan area. There was no restaurants, no McDonald's, no...
Yeah, but I think we passed a school and you thought, oh, we're getting closer somewhere.
Yeah, when I passed the school, I'm like, there must be something near the school, a gas station or something. Nah. But, anyway, let's move on here. Number 4. Down Goes the Titanic.
That's what we're calling it?
Yeah. So, before I get into this one, I do want to once again bring up that most of the time this is a variety channel. Things are changing here a little bit, but regardless, if you like this content, if you like Sonja's content, Shop With Me's taste tests, etc., please feel free to subscribe, share the video, all that good stuff. You know we'd appreciate it, you know we'd love you. And please, for the love of God, watch these videos all the way through. Watch time seems to be a little weird, so... Anyway, back to the Titanic sinking. We call it this because of something my brother said, which I will get to. But this was actually when we were moving down south the first time. So I'd say I was about 13 years old or so. 13, 14. And it was pouring rain all day. And it was pouring rain when I went into a gas station we stopped at. We stopped to fill up gas. My mom, sisters, whatever, had to use the bathroom. So I went into this gas station, and as soon as I stepped foot in the gas station, due to all the rain outside and my shoes being soaking wet, slipped, fell flat on my ass.
Did you hurt yourself?
No. So I slipped, fell flat on my ass. And the cashier was like, "Oh, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. So I stood back up, and as I stood back up, my feet caught again, and I slipped falling forward onto my face. At this point, the cashier is already trying not to laugh at what just happened. And he's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" He's like, "Do you need any help?" I'm like, "I'm perfectly fine. Whatever."
Where's your bathroom?
I get up, and as I get up, due to me slipping and all the movement, and probably just having ill-fitting pants, my pants just go into business for themselves and fall around my ankles. Which happens a lot, and probably more than one story here tonight. So, at this point, I pull up my pants, I'm embarrassed as hell, and everybody in the store is either laughing out loud or trying not to laugh. One mother and their kid, the kid was laughing so hard, and the mother was like, "Shh, stop, that's rude. Don't laugh," while she is also trying not to laugh.
We gotta teach him right.
Well, my mom comes out of the bathroom, and as I'm in the bathroom, she asks my brother what the heck everybody's laughing at. And my brother just goes, I think we just all saw the Titanic capsize.
That's mean.
It is mean, yes, but that's why it's called Down Goes the Titanic. Don't remember what store this was. I know it was in Pennsylvania, and I hope I've never been back there since. I have a bad time with gas stations and pants issues. I've discussed this before. I can't remember what episode. If I remember, I'll link it here. But I've just flat out left my pants behind in the bathroom before and just walked out butt ass naked into a gas station. So it's a bad time, at least when I'm on vacation. So
your life is a cartoon.
Sometimes, yes.
Well, to kind of jump off of that, you moving down south for the first time. Ours, when we moved down years and years later, the drive down was painful because I had to sit in the middle up front and it hurt my butt a lot.
Yeah, we were in... Were we in a U-Haul? We were in a U-Haul.
We had a truck that we borrowed from your brother-in-law, and we had a U-Haul trailer in the back.
Okay, yeah, that's right. We had a pickup truck and the mini U-Haul thing being towed. Let alone, with all due respect, by people that probably shouldn't have been driving that truck, and I didn't have a license at the time, so I couldn't do anything about it. I think we almost took out a McDonald's drive-thru too at some point.
We didn't just almost take it down the drive-thru. We almost took down the whole building, like half the building. We almost hit the corner, basically.
So, and we also went down on a hurricane. We got the tail end. Well, not the tail end, but it was like the very beginning of. I can't remember. Harvey? Was it Harvey? No, Gustav.
I don't think so. I think Harvey was like a year later.
Gustav? No, I think Harvey was even earlier than that. I'm not sure. It was a hurricane that would hit Texas mostly, but we got the outer bands.
It was in 2017.
We got the outer bands that hit us as we were trying to just make our final trip to where we were moving to.
That was probably the most stressed I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
Again, it's not really a vacation, but I'm going to still count it because it was still bad.
It was a road trip, so.
Yeah.
Number 3. Big boy poops.
I'm out of here.
So, for those that don't know, Denny's, I believe, used to also have a chain of restaurants called Big Boys. I'll show the mascot up here on the screen. I'll probably have showed him on the screen prior to this. And we ate there. I can't even remember what vacation this was or where we went. I honestly think it was Myrtle Beach. I feel like it was Myrtle Beach. I'm not certain, though. But we stopped at this Big Boys. I might have been maybe 8 years old. I don't know how old I am in all these, but I'm just going to throw out a random number. We had a Big Boys, and I remember having a hamburger, fries. I think I tried a salad for one of the first times, and then I had a hot cocoa, because it was colder outside.
Hot cocoa?
Yeah, I had
a burger meal?
Yeah, they had hot chocolate, and they were the ones that suggested it, if I remember correctly. So they're like, "Oh, I think your son would love the hot cocoa." So I tried the hot cocoa.
Oh God.
Regretted that, actually. So we get to the hotel that night, and I'm already sleeping in a really fucking shitty place because my mom, sisters got the beds, and I was with my grandfather on a pull-out couch that also happened to be in that room, which was uncomfortable as hell because I remember the bar being in my ass the whole night. But I woke up maybe an hour after sleeping, and I was ill. I was very sick. And I went into the bathroom, and I was just puking, pooping everywhere, like diarrhea, vomit. It tasted just like the fucking hot cocoa, which is why I remember that in particular.
There probably was tainted.
There was taint, alright. Anyway, so yeah, I was vomiting in there. My mom went and got a cooler that we were using for like drinks and whatnot. She brought that in for me to vomit in, because obviously my ass was occupied too. I was doing both. So I was sitting there and I was sick, and I must have thrown up 3-4 times that night.
Jesus. And
we kept that bucket just in case. Plus we took the hotel's ice bucket. Sorry to that hotel. Just in case I needed some sort of extra coverage. Mm-hmm. I didn't throw up the next day. But I had to really go number 2 at some point while we were on the interstate. And I was told my mom, like, I really have to go. She's like, can you hold it? I'm like, probably not. She's like, don't fart. Whatever you do, don't fart. And I was sitting here and rocking back and forth. I was in immense pain. And I got to a point where I couldn't hold it, so I just let out the littlest squeak. I knew when I did.
What did your mom tell you?
Well, I couldn't hold it. Like, if I had held it any longer, I probably would have had much more violent diarrhea in the car. But I let out that little toot, I guess you could say, and it was all wet. Just all wet. So we finally get to the gas station. I go in there, knowing full well I have shit in my pants at this point. I do my business, and obviously I need new underwear. I had to try to get my mom's attention. She's in the car because it was one of those outside bathrooms that certain gas stations have where you have to have a key and all that. I was trying to get my mom's attention because she was in the car still, and I couldn't walk out without my pants on and my underwear, which this is my kid thought. Yes, I've done that. You
should just thrown away the underwear and just go commando.
Well, it soaked through, and my pants were gone too. But I was wearing tighty whities, and to get her attention, I just took these tighty whities that have a nice diarrhea stain on them, and I just wave them out the door to get her attention. And I don't think she ever let me live it down. Since then, she's like, you know how fucking embarrassed I was? I'm like, I was the one that shit my pants.
I wouldn't care. I'd feel bad for my child.
So yeah, like I said at the top of this video, a lot of poop stories, a lot of puke stories, and you get both here, so.
Well, mine is less gross. I'll go back to our trip to Louisiana, which was my first time riding on a plane, and when we got back, riding on a train. First time for both. When we landed...
And if you have the opportunity to ride a train, sorry to cut in. If you have the opportunity to ever do that, it's expensive as shit right now, but I would definitely recommend it.
Right now, but it depends on what you get. Anyway, when we landed in Louisiana, since are they above or below sea level?
They're below sea level, quite a bit below. Okay,
I couldn't remember. Anyway, my ears were on fire, and it took me like 2 days to get them back to normal because I had to do the trick where you like blow, like plug your nose and blow out or whatever to pop them. So yeah, that hurt. But trip was fine. Now, the train ride home, the staff was like super strict on where we sat because we sat on like almost the back of the train. But like, oh no, you can't sit there. I think it's because it's for them to sleep or whatever. But I'm like, there's like 2 seats behind us still. But when he went, he was supplied a blanket and a pillow. Apparently they changed it because they never gave us a pillow or a blanket. And they didn't shut the train lights off until like real late. And
what she meant is prior to meeting Sonja, I had taken a couple train rides. And whenever I did and there was a night train or anything that, was a longer train ride, they did provide pillows, blankets, and they would turn off the cabin lights, which they did none of those during our entire trip.
They did shut the cabin lights off eventually, but it was like 2 a.m.
Yeah, it was way later than they usually do.
It should have been like 11.
But anyway, moving on to number 2. The Plane Ride from Hell. And no, not that one. Shout out to wrestling fans there. Anyway, titled this way, kind of jumping off public transport. I had taken flights. Sorry, 1 second, my computer is being weird. I had taken flights several times at this point. And I wasn't... Flights never made me nervous after a while. My first one, I think everybody that has a brain probably is nervous on their first flight. But after the first time I flew, I was fine. And I used to think, oh, there's nothing of it or whatever. This flight alone has forever severely tainted flights for me. So, what happened is I was traveling... with my friend, actually, from the South. We've traveled from Louisiana up to here to visit my friends and whatnot. And we flew we took the cheapest flights. There were several flights in this set. But unfortunately, because we were trying to save money, some of these flights probably weren't the best. On our second flight, going from, I believe it was Georgia to New Jersey, things just started to go wrong. And this is the first, I've experienced turbulence on a plane, little shaking here and there, and at the worst, like maybe you lower the altitude a bit and whatnot. This felt like the plane was about to fall out of the fucking sky. Because what happened was, as we were riding, everything was going smooth. I don't know if we were at cruising altitude yet, but all of a sudden the fucking plane just nosedives. Like, I'd say 300 feet, maybe more. Just, and everybody on the plane screamed, obviously.
Yeah, because you're like going nice, and then like all of a sudden really fast. Yeah, that would scare anybody.
So we pick up again. We're going back up, and as we're going back up, all of a sudden the fucking plane goes sideways, like really quick. And for some reason, I think they thought it would be safe to do this. They were starting to hand out the meals. And there was a big pile of, like, freshly made microwave burgers as the flights hand out. And when the plane did that, went sideways, all those fucking burgers fell onto my friend's lap because he was sitting in the aisle across from me. And, that scene alone was funny, but I couldn't appreciate it until after. The guy next to me wanted nothing to do with this. Every goddamn 3 minutes on that flight, he was asking for another beer. Or some alcoholic drink. He's like, beer please, beer please. I don't blame him. I mean, for all I knew, that flight was not going to make it to its destination. After the second time that happened, the pilot did come on. He was like, this is the captain speaking. We are going to be experiencing turbulence for the remainder of the flight, so please keep your seatbelts fastened. I still have no idea what happened.
Was it a UFO?
I don't know if we flew through like a really bad storm or if there was something wrong with the plane that caused it to do that.
UFO.
I believe it wasn't a storm or wind because even now I check our flight paths when we go places, probably because of this. But I checked the flight path then too, and that wasn't an issue. The second plane we took after this one, it's probably actually our third plane, also had issues. So it was winter time when we came up here, and when we were in the air on our last plane, and it was one of those little bipedal planes, those really small, like, hopper planes, as they call them. As we were on the plane, flying up into the clouds, whatever, I could see the ice forming on the engine outside. And the engine just kept you kept hearing go, like, starting to stall out a little bit. So they called another announcement. They said that due to weather conditions, they wouldn't be flying at max altitude and they'd be flying a little slower.
Those planes don't go at max altitude, though, because they're usually for smaller flights.
Well, I mean, going from New Jersey to where we were going, I don't even know if they would have had time to reach max altitude, honestly, but... That's
what I mean. Those smaller jet plane things don't usually
even go... So, he was like, yeah, we have to drive slower because of weather conditions. I'm like, yeah, probably because your fucking engine's freezing. I don't know shit about planes, but...
I thought they had shit that makes it so that don't happen.
And I've always wondered, like, since then and whatnot, because it's a very big pipe dream of mine. I've always wanted to kind of fly an airplane, like, actually, be a pilot. Don't know if I'd be coordinated enough or smart enough for that personally, but I've always wondered if being in control of the plane would be different for me, if it would make me feel safer. But... regardless of if that's the case or not, ever since then, every single flight we've taken, I've had super high anxiety.
Which is weird because when we flew down to Louisiana the first time, you didn't seem like you were that nervous.
Oh, that's a load of shit. I definitely was. I probably didn't seem it, but I was pooping my pants. I was a little bit better off then than I was when we went to Japan, simply because I knew the flights we were taking were all shorter.
Or maybe you're just good at hiding it because you knew it was my first flight.
Yeah, I didn't want you to freak out, and that is 100% true also, but I didn't have to worry about you. After the first flight, you were like, let's go, let's do this.
Well, the only thing that freaked me out was like when we first took off, because it's like, ah!
So yeah, it's been a struggle for me ever since to fly, but people have to do things they've always wanted to do in their life, and that's going to lead to number one, so... But let's go with you first here, Sonja Lynn.
Well, this is kind of going to lead to your number one. From Japan to what, Boston? That was fine. That was like the coolest flight ever. Now to Boston to New York? No. First off, as soon as we landed, we thought we were going to miss our flight because it went on a little longer than it was supposed to. So we were rushing to get to the gate as fast as we could so we could make our flight. And the staff there were all rude. We weren't even being rude. We were just like trying to pick our stuff up and go. But like, I don't know. When we told them why we went to Japan, like, oh, just to experience culture, and he's likes to collect games and stuff. Like, the guy gave him a dirty look. I'm like,
well,
you call yourself a cop?
It was customs. I imagine they have to be a little bit dickish, but
no,
I don't know.
The way
he still took.
He wasn't very professional.
Considering we literally declared everything we had, and for all intents and purposes, we're not giving off any vibes like, "Hey, you need to be suspicious of us." I don't know why they took long to get us through, longer than they should have, but because that did make us basically have to book a good mile and a half, because Logan Airport, I think that's what it's called in Boston, Logan International Airport.
Oh.
That fucking place is huge, so.
Yeah, we were out of breath by the time we got there. But we got there, and our flight was actually
yeah, it was.
Delayed.
It was delayed like
I know,
a half
but I was
hour.
like, what the hell's the word I'm looking for? Yes. It was delayed, so I'm like, okay, all right. But the loudspeaker comes on, and he said your name, and they botched our last name. And I was like, oh my God, really? Because my anxiety was through the roof at this point, and I was angry because people were just giving us dirty looks. People were rude. I mean, Boston might be a great place, but some of the people there, I've been there.
Boston's not a great place. I have no problem bearing you guys.
I've been there like
Boston sucks.
I've been there 3 times, and they are not the friendliest of people.
It's in contrast to Salem itself, which is outside Boston, which everybody there has always been great. But inside Boston proper, closer to the city, they've always fucking sucked. And just in general, the whole area sucks for parking, pricing, everything like that, so. Well,
before I get too out of the fair, but we forgot our stroller at the baggage claim, and I'm like, you son of a bitch, you forgot it, because I had our son and like a couple other bags, and you had the suitcase. I mean, I can't really blame you, we were in a rush, but I'm like, son of a bitch.
So now a 300-pound man has to make it like a half a mile back across the airport to get a fucking stroller before we board our flight and miss it.
No, we still had a few minutes after that. And I was like, why is it taking so long? It was almost delayed an hour.
Oh yeah, well. Regardless, it was not a fun experience,
no. So the very last part was, this plane was probably the tiniest plane I've ever been on. I was too tall for it. I'm already claustrophobic. This was making it worse. And like, I was trying not to bump my head and my son's head. And I was like, a ball just to get into the window seat. And thank God, and the other thing that pissed me off, I had a Dr. Pepper and I dropped it. I think I managed to get it back when we landed, but I couldn't. I was looking forward to that soda. I was thirsty.
I think that's the saddest I've heard you sound in a while.
Yes, because I was looking forward to that soda, and I dropped it. But thank God, me and my son, with him on my lap, we slept for most of it. It was only like an hour to 2 hour flight, but my God, it was the worst. I hate those tiny planes. They shouldn't exist.
And I think that...
Oh, there goes my hat.
The flight, just real quick, Boston to where we were going, back home.
New York.
From there upwards, well, that flight was the only flight out of all the ones we took where I felt like my ass was too small for the seat. There was an issue going to Japan. I'll talk about it in a minute. But that was the only one where I was like, yeah, I'm like struggling to fit this whole ass in that seat.
I hate that. Like, I never feel safe in those, because I think when we flew to Louisiana for our trip the first time, I think when we came home, like, we went from Louisiana to, like, Charlotte or something like that, and then that to New York.
Yeah, it was Charlotte.
We had one of the, well, it might have been a little further, but we did have a small plane where it's only the row is only 3 seats. These planes are ridiculous. If they had more space in between the seats and not be so greedy to put them all so close together, I don't know. Those things just don't feel safe to me at all, and they shouldn't exist.
Well, anyway, without further ado, we are going to get into number 1. Big Trouble in Little Tokyo. I think that's a movie title, right? I'm not 100% sure. I don't know.
I think so.
So comparatively, this one might not seem as bad as some of the other ones, but a few factors take into account. One, what I just said in the previous story about my super high anxiety with flights now multiply that by like 10 because I'm going to be on a flight for like 20 hours. Two, I have literally waited the majority of my life to go to Japan, so I wanted to make sure I didn't do anything stupid or make an idiot of myself when I was there. And that went out the window almost immediately. So, to start was the flight from Chicago, I believe. All the way from Chicago to Tokyo. The flight itself did have turbulence at one point over Alaska. That's not really the problem. First problem was...
No, you got it wrong.
What?
I think it was Chicago to Dallas, Dallas to Tokyo.
Oh, yes, it was Dallas. My bad. I do apologize for that. Not that it matters. Nobody would have known.
No, but that it makes more sense now because that's why we went to Alaska.
I think we would have anyway. I don't think we were going to fly over Russia. Or no, we wouldn't fly over Russia.
All
Where
right,
the fuck would we fly? I don't know. Anyway, Alaska, yes, there was turbulence over Alaska. I think a lot of it had to do with really cold temperatures because we were near the Arctic Circle and whatnot.
You could call it turbulence, but that fucking plane was going boom, 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 boom.
It was turbulence, wind, snow, whatever was causing it.
Extreme.
And we did fly in the end of December, so that makes perfect sense also. But when we got on the flight, I was sitting on the inside seat to give Michelle... I don't even know someone with that name. Anyway, to give Sonja and our little boy some room. And the seat I chose, had an armrest that came down. Now my butt fit fine in it, but the armrest was wide and was cutting into my side. And you could put them up in every other seat on that flight. Mine was broken and would not move. So, needless to say, I had nice little bruises when I got to Japan that were on my leg for like, I don't know, a week.
Yeah, I thought you were exaggerating because you usually don't bruise, and then you showed me. I'm like, oh.
Well, yeah, because it was this hard ass armrest that was like kind of like also a table sort of dial thing for the TV and whatnot.
Yeah.
That was digging into my hip for thousands of miles, 10 hours. So yeah, 10 plus hours. The other thing is towards the end of the flight, when we were coming into Japan itself. Our little man got sick again.
That's when we landed.
And I don't know if what was causing it was exhaustion. I don't think it was hunger because he ate fine.
Getting overworked.
Overexerted, overworked, getting too upset. Regardless, he threw up on me. And I don't know, he might have got you as well.
He got a little bit of me. I think a little bit more got on you, but it wasn't like a lot of puke. It was like bile. So
I'm showing up in Tokyo, my dream trip, Japan. I'm showing up to the airport already covered in puke.
You were not that covered. You had a little bit on your shoulder.
It was still there. Mm-hmm. And then we got through customs, and I didn't know this until later, but usually, I guess international flights will have you declare your customs, like what you have on you, etc. They'll have you do that while you're still on the flight, which we did on the way back to America. But on the way to Japan, we didn't do that, so we had to...
Well, that wasn't our fault. I think we were, like, falling asleep, and the girl skipped us and kept doing it behind, and she never came... It's not maybe. I was awake. She's like, oh, I'll come back. She never came back, so we didn't get the paper, so we couldn't do it on the airplane.
But we were in customs, and when we were in customs, it was super packed. Obviously, I don't know the language. That's one of the reasons I've started to learn hiragana and all that shit.
It was super packed because one of the part of the airport was blocked off for construction.
Yeah, it was construction.
So everyone went in this one little area.
So yeah, we were all packed in there. A lot of people. I mean, literally thousands of people, which is funny considering that COVID was actually a thing at this point, but we didn't know. So
it wasn't reported, though.
It wasn't reported because it hadn't spread so far, but that definitely could have been a super spreader area if people knew at that time. But yeah, we were all packed in there. I was trying to figure out what to do. I went to the wrong customs form first. I was filling out the wrong one. I was filling out something for like local, I guess, or something like that. So I had to find the right one. And I'm tired. I'm stressed out. I'm covered in vomit. I did get angry with Sonja and my son because my anxiety was high.
Yeah, all I literally was asking, like, what's going on? And you did not answer me at all. You just was stone-faced. And I'm like, hello. Well, and it made Raiden upset. So I was like...
My anxiety was through the roof, and I was like, I didn't know what was going on really all that well.
You could have tried explaining it to me, like, I'm not really sure. I think this is the wrong form. But you didn't. You just were like...
Yeah, and I know that...
And that made me more anxious and more upset. I was about to ready to just fucking walk out the airport at that time. Alright, let's keep talking.
So we got through customs. That took a nice, 2 hours maybe altogether. 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours to get through customs. Then
yeah,
and then
it was like 3 o'clock when we landed. It was 6:30 when we left.
And then like the whole last hour after I got through customs and everything else was just trying to figure out how to get to our hotel from there, which turned out not to be as difficult as I thought. But at first we were going to take the train, which we decided not to take the train because it was overpacked.
I was going to say, if we took the train, we would have been in line for another hour. And I'm like, I need to get out of here pronto. I'm gonna have a mental breakdown.
But that said, I did get our Suica cards there, which was one of the things I'm like, I got to do that as soon as I get there. So...
Yeah, we got the Suica cards, looked at the huge line, and we're like, let's go see if a bus. And the bus was a little bit cheaper, so it was alright in the long run.
So yeah, we got the bus. We somebody at the counter directed us that the bus would actually probably be cheaper and better. Plus, there was like supposedly a discount for travelers. And I was dead thirsty at the time, so I took advantage of my first vending machine in Japan and found my second love of Aquarius. But we get on the bus. I'm dragging this out. We get on the bus. And from like all the adrenaline, everything else, I started to get tired. But at the same time, I was like, oh my god, I'm in Japan. I'm like looking at all these sights, seeing everything. I'm like, yeah.
That bus ride was very relaxing.
After everything we had just went through.
Yeah,
until the end.
Down.
So, at the end of the bus ride, I get up. And when I get up, I'm trying to like make sure I have all the bags and everything because Sonja had left them with me. And
no, I didn't.
Yeah, you did. I had all the bags.
I grabbed my bag that I had in his bag, and I went out of the bus to get the stroller and our suitcase.
Well, regardless, Sonja was outside. I was with my son. I swear I had bags because
you had bags, but it was like your laptop bag.
I don't know, I was distracted, but regardless, when I lifted our son up to pick him up, I bashed his head off the roof of the bus. So strike number 2, covered in puke. Strike 1 was covered in puke. Strike 2 is looking like a terrible father. And there was this one Japanese woman who could barely speak English, like, oh, is he okay? And I'm like, yeah, he's fine. And as I'm talking to her, once again, my pants decide we're going into business for ourselves and fall down. I have no idea why this happens. It only happens on trips mostly, but it does.
You need a belt.
I do need a belt, a better belt than what I had, but so yes, strike 3 of making an ass of myself in Japan is I lose my pants while on the bus in front of all the locals, and to their credit, everybody didn't look like they noticed or they were being quiet about it. I think that's just how the Japanese people are, but I know if I was in a similar situation and I saw this, I would honestly think I'm on a hidden camera show or something because it just seems so outlandish, everything that was going on. But to cap all this off, when we finally got to our room after all that embarrassment, cleaned up, changed my clothes, whatever, obviously I'm experiencing some jet lag, so I'm up at 4 in the morning, and I'm like, I'm gonna kind of enjoy the fact that I'm here in Japan, take a nice little stroll down the street real quick, check some things out, and I get to like the street corner, I just feel wind on my ass, and I'm like, it's awfully drifty here, and then I noticed that the pants I brought, and I had walked out of the hotel in, had a giant hole in the backside, so not only did I lose my pants in the first 24 hours in Japan, but I walked out in just my underwear basically the second time. So, for that reason, and the fact that I was looking forward to this trip, and I was trying so hard to make a good impression and not be a dumb foreigner, that's why it's number one. Anything you want to add to this particular story, Sweetie?
Well, I mean, to add to the poop, when we went to the Ueno Zoo, Raiden had like a blowout. And I had to wait forever because they had, the women's bathroom had like a nursing and like pregnant area in the bathroom, and they only had like 2 stalls. And everyone was like changing their baby at the same time that I had to change him.
Well, that's kind of also a problem just in Japan. The zoo, I think, should have had probably more bathrooms, rest stops, things like that. But
they kind of did. They're more out than like other zoos I've seen.
Besides like Don Quixote, yeah, that's really all I can think of right now. There wasn't all that many bathrooms in publicly or otherwise that were around. Don Quixote and the one that we saw in the zoo, and there's only one in the zoo that I was aware of.
No, there's more.
You think there was more?
I don't think. I know. There was a lot of bathrooms there.
I don't know. Regardless, you got to live out a little bit of a dream there as well. So it was a dream trip overall, just a very bad beginning to that trip. If you want to know more about that trip, we do have an episode on Japan, which I'll link it in the description below. Honestly, been thinking of redoing that episode too, because now I'm having a little bit better with editing, so I think it'd be a little bit more involved. So with that said, that is my top 5 worst vacation/trip experiences, with Sonja's input as well. We'd obviously like to know what your personal bad experiences are, so if you don't mind it, leave it in the comments below. We will definitely read it. With that said, so I mentioned again at the top of the video, we will be talking a bit about what's going on with the channel. To start will be Our Life the Show and why it's been cut back significantly. One, and this is the major one, is work requirements. Obviously, we don't get paid to do YouTube. Look at our view count, you know that. So we have our real lives to worry about outside of that. And because we've been busy, just haven't had time to edit as many videos and whatnot. I've also ran out of ideas to do somewhat, because I didn't want it to drift too close to, some other content creators that you might be aware of, like Good Mythical Morning.
I still say I'm like theirs.
We're not like them by any means, because we don't have the production value and all that, but I don't know. I feel like some of our ideas or whatever overlapped, not just with them, but with other people that do similar shit, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted something more unique, and I think the most unique thing is to probably go back to our roots of what we mostly were doing at the beginning anyway. Maybe throw in some extra fun stuff every once in a while. Taste tests always seem to do good and stuff like that. Another reason that we switched up a bit is because of Sonja's solo content, which seems to do way better just focusing on just her content as opposed to the variety idea that I wanted to start this channel as. That doesn't mean Our Life the Show is going away. What I'm going to start doing is I'm probably going to only do it once a month on the channel here, with the main focus again being more of Sonja's stuff. I don't know if we'll change the channel's name, anything like that. Right now it's still all S Family Studios. As for some other series, the podcast that we were doing, an actual podcast as we called it, and things like Game Night Champions, it seemed that there wasn't all that much interest in either of those, so we just kind of stopped them. But even with that in mind, as far as gaming content is concerned, I am thinking of using my second channel, pardon me, King Vito's Gaming. I'm thinking of starting to do some more content over there. And one of the first things I want to do is more like, kind of like talking to you, vloggy-ish style, about games, certain games or whatever. And I think the first episode I want to do is actually cover what my favorite game is, Mystical Ninja. Hopefully that will come out in the next few weeks. Don't set your calendars. I don't have any fucking set date for that. But it is something I want to do in the future. So that's what's been going on with the channel, regardless. And I hope I see you over on King Vito's Gaming. Anything you'd like to throw out there before we close up this episode, Sonja?
Subscribe. And watch my Halloween videos.
Speaking of Halloween, thank you for calling into this. Next, Our Life the Show will be done in October at some point. My God, my voice is terrible tonight. It'll be done in October at some point, which is obviously the spooky month, and we already kind of lean into the spooky content a lot. So
I'm always spooky.
What our next month's episode is going to be is our Halloween episode. What I would like you guys to do, the few people that will be watching this, go ahead, either leave a comment below or send us a message through the S Family Studios Facebook page or Twitter. Tell us your personal scary stories, and we will be picking some of those and reading them on air, as well as a couple of ours.
Always anonymous, too.
Oh, yes.
Anonymous.
You're anonymous unless you want a specific name attached to it. That's up to you. But other than that, thank you for watching the return of Our Life the Show, the return of the return, and we hope to see you next month. Bye. Oh, God, my nose is itchy.
It's called allergies, bro.
I know.